Today I'm talking to Daniel Pauly about his work studying human impacts on global fisheries. He is a French-born and Canadian marine biologist, and in 2020 was the most cited fisheries scientist in the world. Hi, Dr. Pauly. Thank you for
Hello.
joining me today. This year, UN economist Rashid Sumaila were awarded the 2023 Tyler Prize for Environmental Achievement for your scientific work to end overfishing and to restore equality to our oceans. Winning the Tyler Prize is like winning a Nobel Prize for the environment, correct?
Well, that's what they say.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
How are the oceans the lungs of the planet?
First of all, it is important to recall that life emerged in the oceans and the land was colonized by algae that became plants, the plants that grow on the land, and that marine animals learned to walk on land. So that's the origin. And also, it is in the ocean that the first photosynthesis happened. That is the production of oxygen by plants, algae in that case. The oxygen that we have originate from plants that originated in the ocean. And at present, I think they contribute 50% of the oxygen that is in the atmosphere. So we use oxygen, it's always renewed, and the 50% comes from the oceans.
How does not fishing in the high seas help protect the ocean's ability to regulate temperatures and sequester carbon?
The high seas make up 60% of the world ocean, but they don't contribute much to fisheries catches, about 5 to 10%. You catch only tuna and some sharks in the open ocean. A fish that serves as food for humanity is caught within 200 miles of the shore of countries, and that's called the exclusive economic zone. So fisheries are essentially a coastal affair. So the high seas are not an important source of protein for humanity, not at all. The fish that we caught in the high seas, they move a lot. They migrate between the high seas and EEZ. So they could be caught in the EEZ instead of being caught in the high seas. That would mean that far more countries could catch tuna, which right now are not catching tuna because they are caught in the high seas by 5 or 6 countries. That is South Korea, Taiwan, China, Spain, France, and a few other countries. And by catching this tuna in the high seas, these 5 or 6 countries catch all the tuna for them instead of letting the countries catch them in the EZ. Maybe 50 countries could benefit from that. So if there were no fishing in the high seas, there would be far more equity because the catch in the high seas could be distributed among more countries because they would be caught in the EZs. And this catch would not be very important anyway because you don't catch much in the high seas. And it would produce less greenhouse gases to go there because you don't have to go far offshore to catch what you caught in the high seas. And finally, it would enable the high seas to rebuild its stocks of fish and other animals, the whales and the other animals who fertilize the sea through their feces. The whales, and that is well known, fertilize the open seas and make it more productive than it is. And because we have wiped out the whales, they are slowly rebuilding. But the high seas have become less productive than it was before. And this production that was occurring before, it had a big impact on the climate because the whales concentrate lots of carbon and then they died. This carbon was transported to the depth of the ocean where it was taken up and taken out of the atmosphere.
You wanted to use the Tyler Prize to spread the message that all fishing on the high seas should be banned.
This is one of the things that I want to do with Rashid Sumaila. We got this award and we will make the best out of it and we will talk about that. But we will also start a scholarship for African scholars that they can come to UBC for a month and they will be looked after by one professor here that will be the mentor for a period of 1 year. And that is a scheme that we will start by donating some of the money what we get for the award, and University of British Columbia will match these funds, and this way it will be possible to benefit African scientists that otherwise cannot get good mentorship.
That is is so cool.
Yes, that is a good thing that we're going to do. Yeah.
I was at COP15 where they promised to protect 30% of the planet by 2030. Lots of people were asking for 50%. Is 30 enough?
Well, I personally like the 50% because half for humanity and half for nature. You know, when you have to split between two friends, the best way to split with a friend is 50-50. And 30-70, that would be unfair. And I personally think that the idea of 50% for nature, 50% for us would be a good way to maintain our civilization on Earth and to maintain biodiversity and so on. 30% is also a good target. But we have to be careful that countries do not declare part of nature protected and then not protect it. For example, we have in Europe a program of marine protection where they create marine protected areas, and then in this marine protected area you can fish as much as you want. And that doesn't make any sense. In a marine protected area you cannot have fishing in it, and they allow even trawling in it, which is an impossible thing. You should not have trawling in a marine protected area. And so the danger of these targets that are very high is that countries agree to them, makes them look good, but then they don't really protect the sea. They do what is known as paper park, a park that is in paper a national park, but on the ground is going to be treated like a trash field.
I feel like if I wanted to catch a fish, the best place to do it would be in coastal water. I worry that a lot of dolphins, sharks, sea turtles, and whales get caught by accident in our high seas. How much marine life is injured or killed in bycatch?
So the bycatch is a big problem, especially when a gear is used, a fishing gear that is not selective. When you fish with a hook and line, by choosing the hook and bait well, and the location where you fish and depth where you fish it, you can select what you're going to catch. If, on the other hand, you drag a giant net behind a boat that catch everything in its path, you are not selective. And unselective fishing is the worst that we can do. And trawlers, you know what a trawler is, right? Pulls a giant net behind a boat. Trawlers are unselective and very destructive. There is other methods that are very selective that we could use instead. And the best is hook and line and traps. Traps, you can regulate how big the fish are that are getting in and cannot get back out. You can regulate what you catch by putting them at certain place and not at certain other place. So basically, we should be able to convert our fishing method to selective method. Then we would have no bycatch.
What happens if we don't ban fishing on the high seas?
Well, the business as usual will continue, and business as usual involves overfishing because the high sea, there's few regulation and also a large amount of criminality. For example, it's hard to believe, but it's true. There is lots of slaves working on boats. They find them in bars in countries like Thailand and Cambodia. Young men that are in bars, they make them drunk, and then they wake up and they're on a boat, and they cannot leave for 5-10 years. That is happening on a grand scale, and it has been estimated that there are about 100,000 slaves, in effect, fishing the high seas in Pacific Ocean.
Wow, that's...
The problem with the high seas, only the UN can legislate over the high seas. Nobody is really responsible. Whereas in the EEZ, in the exclusive economic zone of countries, the legislation of every country is key. So you will have less criminality in exclusive economic zone and the high seas.
The world subsidized almost 1.5 trillion Canadian in fossil fuels last year. You want governments to stop subsidizing giant fishing companies too. How much do these companies receive, and why do we keep subsidizing the things that are worse for the planet?
There is different kind of subsidies. Altogether in fisheries, they amount to about 1/3 of the first sale value. When you sell a fish that is landed, that's first sale. Then it resale and so on. And when it gets to the consumers, it has much increase in price. So the first sale value of fish is about $100 billion a year. And the subsidy make up about 30% of that, about $30 billion subsidies. And of this amount, some of them are good things, like safety at sea, navigation, health, and security. These are good subsidies, but most are ways to enable fisheries that have overfished to continue fishing, even though there is not enough fish to keep them going. And this form of subsidization is very bad because the fleet doesn't go after the fish, it goes after the subsidies, really. It could not continue if it didn't get the subsidies. And when a stock is overfished, if you continue to fish it, then it will never recover. And so subsidies should not be awarded for the simple reason that when a stock is overfished and you cannot make money catching fish that are free in a sea to catch, then you shouldn't be fishing when you cannot do that profitably. And the idea of subsidizing is crazy because it encourages overfishing. And $20 to $25 billion are subsidized. Europe and Asia give huge subsidies to their fisheries.
If we do close the high seas, you believe that there will be no loss in the total number of fish caught?
Yes, I believe that.
Why?
Because the tuna that we catch in the high seas migrate back and forth between EEZs and coastal areas and high sea areas. So they could be caught when they are in the EEZ. So the high sea would become like a fish bank. And when the fish migrate into the EEZ, they would be caught there. And it would be easy to monitor from space because you can see each boat from space and see what it does. It would be easier to monitor no fishing than some fishing because fishing imposes a certain pattern. For example, if you fish with a seine net, with a purse seine, you have to make a circle. If you fish with a trawl, you go back and forth like this. So you can see it from space what they do. So it would be possible to identify the track because they have an automatic identification device that tells the satellite this boat is here for insurance purpose. So each boat is identified that is in the high seas. And as long as they don't switch off this automatic identification system, and if they switch it off, then you know that they are cheating.
You say the carbon value of the fish in high seas is 10 times the value of fish we take every year to sell and eat. What does this mean?
Basically, if we want to fight against climate change, we have to compute the cost of removing carbon from the atmosphere. And fish do that also. And if we apply the cost of removing carbon from the atmosphere to them, then it's better to leave them alone than to catch them. But this computation can only be made for the benefit of society as a whole. A fisherman would never agree with that because the benefit to them as people who can catch the fish are always higher than they would get indirectly if you were computing the benefit to society as a whole. The benefit to society as a whole is much bigger, but calculated on a per person basis, you make more money if you keep on fishing than if you don't. It's like the benefit from emitting less carbon. Everybody will benefit from it. But if you want to have a big car, you get bigger benefit for yourself than you would get if you divided societal benefit in a millionth because there are many people.
Is there anything kids can do to protect ocean health?
Yeah, talk with the parents that they stop voting for right-wing politicians who don't want to do anything about ocean health. That is one thing until you can vote. And some kids can get involved in groups, NGOs, non-government group, that fight locally for an improvement of the environment around them. And if you do that, a school project or community project, then you learn about how the world works and you can speak louder and louder and join other people. An example is Seven Kulis Suzuki, who at the age of 9 or some very young age, she went to a big conference and she said she wants the world to be improved because she's going to live in it and she doesn't want everything to be trashed. And she raised the money for the trip and she went to Rio de Janeiro to speak to the delegate of the big environmental conference. So kids can do things and it's going to be your world because people like me, they're not going to be there in 20 years.
This has been a really good talk. Thanks so much for joining me today. Sign the Change.org petition to call for a ban on high seas fishing. And remember, together kids can save the world. Please like and subscribe. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.